All right, welcome back. Another episode, Friday Night at the Barbell. Today I bring you Nik Aston. He's a Highland Games athlete and strength coach. I imagine you've competed in weightlifting too, if I am remembering that. Yes.
I've done a couple weightlifting meets, a couple powerlifting meets, but yeah, Highland Games is my main thing.
Cool. Give us a little bio. Uh, what do you What do you do, and how did you find Highland Games?
Yeah, so my name is Nik Aston, pro Highland Games athlete, also a strength coach. I run my own personal training, strength coaching business called Enchanted Strength Personal Training out of a gym here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I originally wanted to be a college strength coach going into college. I got to grad school, did my first internship, decided I hated every second of it, and ended up deciding on the private route, personal training. I found Highland Games through just being a thrower at UNM. I threw the javelin on the UNM track team, and Highland Games is kind of track and field adjacent. So like when you're watching throwing videos on track and field, sometimes like some Highland Games stuff will come up, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder how that, like, what's going on there. So ended up seeing that there was a local games in New Mexico, and I went to check it out after the track season and just thought it was really cool. Then shortly after, moved away to North Carolina for graduate school, and I was at the gym one day and I saw a guy wearing a Highland Games shirt. So I just went up and talked to him. I was like, hey man, tell me about that. And he took me out to practice and I fell in love immediately. At that point, I'd
That's
done a couple powerlifting meets, done a couple weightlifting meets, and I'd never had more fun than chucking around some heavy blocks of steel and throwing a hay bale.
that's awesome. I think one of my favorite things to watch that I have never done before is throwers. Just in general, like in the Olympics, that's probably what I'm most excited for when it comes to track and field is the field,
Yeah, for
which I
sure.
wasn't like that. I used to love watching the sprinters, but now, like
Hmm.
anytime I get to see a thrower, it's just exciting.
Yeah,
They
throwing
get
it's
super hyped
basically
up.
another. Yeah, for sure. It's just like another strength sport.
Yeah,
Very
it is.
similar vibe to like powerlifting, weightlifting.
Yeah, yeah, those guys and girls are very strong.
Definitely.
And we have actually, so I'm from Tuscaloosa. Well, kind of. I'm from Alabama. Lived in Tuscaloosa for a while, and the women's, I guess, heavyweight Olympic champ from last year, or not last year, from the last Olympics, is actually from Tuscaloosa.
In which event?
The shot.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So I got to see them and some of the sprinters and the throwers during the like COVID season.
Hmm.
They would come to the local commercial gym because the facilities were closed off for anyone that wasn't a football player
Hmm.
at the University of Alabama. They're just like, those guys are, prized animals. They're not allowed to congregate with anyone else.
Right.
So, like, I got to see a lot of the throwers and sprinters training, and it was
Yeah.
really cool to watch.
Nice. Yeah. Albuquerque, we've got a really nice indoor track here, and they every year, every other year, I'm not sure what the rotation is, but they'll end up hosting either NCAA nationals, indoor nationals, or USATF indoor nationals. So same thing. Like when those meets happen, we'll get a lot of those big names to come work out at the gym
Cool.
where I work. So yeah, it's really
Yeah,
cool to see those guys and girls up close.
that's awesome. I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be really fun to watch this year, and then we got hopefully the gold and silver medalists in the shot for USA, and then
Hmm.
what our female discus thrower is incredible as well.
Yeah,
I think we always normally struggle in the javelin, if I'm not wrong.
yeah. Women's javelin is decent. Men's javelin has not been good in quite a while.
Yeah,
But women's shot put, Chase Ely, she's actually from New Mexico. I think she won the Tokyo Games. She got the gold medal. So she hopefully will have her repeating her Olympic title as well.
it's gonna be fun. Well, can you explain? Because I've been around it because we have a mutual friend, Danny Webster, who just
Hmm.
came into Highland Games, same as you, like loved it, has just lived and breathed it for the last few years, or probably the last 10 years, and then more recently has become, the head honcho down in the South.
Hmm.
Can you just give us a little rundown about what the Highland Games is?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Danny's a great guy. I've been to a couple of his games. Always love. He puts on a good games. Yeah. So Highland Games, I like to describe it as kind of a cross between track and field throwing, and strongman, where you get very much the like whoever throws the furthest wins type thing in track and field, but you also have the spectacle aspect that you have in strongman, where you're throwing around telephone poles and stuff that you just don't see like anywhere else. But yeah, they're normally attached to a Scottish festival. It's a celebration of Scottish culture, Scottish heritage. Games in Scotland go back to like the 1300s, I want to say. There are 9 different events. There are 6 distance events, 2 height events, and 1 accuracy event. So the distance events are the Braemar stone, which is a standing stone throw. Think like a shot put, but you're not allowed to do any sort of spin or advance, just from a standing position. The open stone is like the Olympic shot put, where you can do any sort of approach you want. 16-pound stone, just throwing it as far as you can. The next events are the weights. So the heavy and light weights for distance, those are a 56-pound weight and a 28-pound weight, respectively. Thrown with one hand, again, throwing for distance. The hammers are a 22-pound hammer and a 16-pound hammer, very similar to the Olympic hammer. The only difference is in the Scottish hammer, you're not allowed to move your feet. So if you've seen the Olympic hammer, the people are turning around in a circle really fast. They get going super fast and then blast the hammer out there 200 plus feet. Scottish hammer is done from a standing position, so you're not allowed to move your feet at all until after you've thrown the implement. The height events are the weight over bar, which is a 56-pound weight thrown with one hand up over a crossbar. And then the sheaf toss, which is a 20-pound burlap sack filled with twine and weights and stuff, and that's thrown with a pitchfork up over a crossbar. And then the caber toss is kind of the marquee event of the Highland Games. Most people are at least somewhat familiar with that. They've maybe seen it on YouTube or seen it on TV somewhere. And that's the just giant telephone pole looking thing that you have to pick up, run with, and try to flip end over end.
I know probably before I saw any Highland Games stuff, that is the one I saw. Besides like a stone lift.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if Danny was there or not. I remember going to a like sports festival, and there was Highland Games competition going on beside a strongman competition, beside a powerlifting competition, beside bodybuilding, all at the same time.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I remember them having the caber inside, and it was wild to watch.
Were you at the Arnold?
No, this was actually in Atlanta.
Okay.
It was like a very, very, very miniature Arnold.
Gotcha. Yeah. There are a couple games that operate that way that are separate from a Scottish festival that happen usually at those strength sport festivals where there's a weightlifting meet going on, a powerlifting meet, strongman show. But yeah, the vast majority of games will happen at Scottish festivals all over the country and all over the world.
Yeah, I always thought it was super interesting. I need to get over to one, especially one that Danny runs. It's just, what's y'all's season normally run? Because I know there's a specific season.
Depending where you live and how much or when you want to travel, you can pretty much compete year round. But I'd say the meat of the season, at least for the pros, is from late spring to early fall. So like April, May time frame until late August or late September, early October.
Gotcha. And,
but there's games like Danny hosts a game in this season in Central Florida in January. I competed at that one this year. So yeah, there's games like in the hotter states, like in the South and Texas and stuff, that'll put on games through the winter.
Yeah, I need to get over to one. I think he's got one coming up in Mississippi very soon in Hattiesburg.
Yep.
And it's supposed to be a big one.
Yeah, he's doing a pretty cool thing there where normally there's a separation between professional and amateur in the sport, but he's running what's called an open class where kind of anyone can sign up and compete for prize money, and the top 5 spots get paid. So yeah, it's
what I saw.
Kind of pretty cool concept, and a lot of big name guys and girls are signed up already. So
I mean, it's guys like him that are going to change like the dynamic of it, because he's trying to bring more people out to watch it and make it interesting.
Yep.
And that's kind of where like all the other ones still lack, like powerlifting, weightlifting. Like they still lack that. It's not quite there yet.
Right. Which is funny because like you ask the average person if they're familiar with those sports, and they'll probably say yes, but a lot of people aren't super familiar with Highland Games, even though you get a lot more people that want to come watch Highland Games than sit through watching a powerlifting meet or a weightlifting meet.
100%. Same thing with strongman. Like I would much rather go watch a strongman competition than powerlifting.
Yep.
And then Highland Games would be the same. Like I would rather go watch that. It's just maybe not conveniently located most of the time. Maybe that's the only
Right.
difference. Powerlifting meet can be in any gym
Hmm.
almost. So, what's been your best result so far? You're already a pro, and I don't think you've really been doing it that long, if I'm right.
Yeah. So
I mean,
this is my sixth year competing. It's my
yeah.
second
So,
year as a pro. Yeah. So last year was my first full season as a pro. The year before, I did one pro competition at the end of the year. So yeah, this is my second full pro season. Last year, I placed fifth at the pro national championships. So that's probably my best result so far.
yeah, that's pretty good.
Two
2 years
two
as a
years,
pro.
yeah.
Yeah,
And my last season as an amateur, I won the IHGF national championships, and
that's right.
then that qualified me to go to the world championships, and I took second there
That's fun.
behind
Is
a
it?
yeah.
I know there's not. It's not necessarily as lucrative as other sports, even like strength sport wise. Is there any like potential sponsorship stuff or anything like that in Highland Games?
I can tell you, I make tens of dollars as a professional Highland Games athlete. Um,
If that.
yeah, no, there are a few like really good paying games where you throw well, you make couple thousand bucks. As far as sponsorships go, there are a couple guys who have sponsors. Most of us don't though.
Yeah, that
But
makes
yeah, the
sense.
opportunity's there. You just gotta you gotta be marketable and be good at the social media stuff, which I feel like a lot of us aren't so great with.
No, we're all
But
meatheads at heart, so
yeah, for sure.
it's tough.
But yeah, there's nothing stopping anyone from getting sponsors. There are a few like bigger name guys that have big and girls that have bigger followings that are kind of getting into the sport and getting more eyes on it. And as more of that happens, there will probably be more money that gets into the sport just from more
Yeah,
eyes being on it. So
I do feel like it's more. I mean, it's more marketable. Like in my opinion, I guess maybe powerlifting is to an extent. Like just because you can have people like Russ Orhey or something that looks like a bodybuilder while they're powerlifting, like that
mhm.
kind of thing. But to me, Highland Games and strongman has the potential to be like very clip worthy. There's a lot of people out there squatting. It sounds weird to say, but there's a lot of people squatting 700 pounds. Whereas when you're flipping a caber, it's like much more interesting to watch that happen.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, definitely a lot more of a spectacle.
Oh yeah, it's like a circus,
Yep,
in a good way.
yep.
So what's your favorite event? You're a former thrower, so I imagine you have to have one, right?
I love the hammers. Those are my
Yeah.
favorite events. Yeah, they go the furthest. I just think they're the most fun and beautiful to watch. Very technical events. So just being the biggest, strongest guy isn't necessarily going to help you out in those. You got to be very mobile, very just fluid and dynamic. And I love those events.
Um, so the Olympic hammer goes over 200 feet. How far does a Highland Games hammer go on average? Would you say like a far
A
throw?
lot shorter than that. So yeah,
Yeah.
Olympic. I want to say some of those guys are throwing more like 300 feet in the Olympic hammer, but Scottish hammer, since we're throwing it from a standing position, I think the world record in the light hammer, which is the 16-pound hammer, is around 157 feet. And then the world record in the heavy hammer is around 130 feet.
I mean
And that's
that's
the
still pretty
22
fucking
pound hammer.
far.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no
It's still
no feet.
really cool to watch those hammers fly.
Yeah, because I mean that's a heavy hammer to be flying 130 feet,
Yep.
just like through the air. It's
Yeah.
very impressive to watch.
Yeah. So those are my favorite. I also love the height events. I used to hate the sheaf toss, but I've recently, like over the past couple of years, figured out how to do it a little better. And that one's really
Yeah.
cool too. Just flicking a bag off your fork and watching it go up over a crossbar. That's a great crowd event too. The crowd always loves watching the sheaf toss.
I was gonna say, yeah, it seems like a good one. Just because getting it over the pole is like very suspenseful.
Yep.
Because you
Yeah.
get
There's
3 attempts, right?
3 attempts at each height.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. People working their
Yeah.
way up or missing it 2 times in a row. It's like
Yep. Yeah.
suspenseful.
There's few cooler things in the world than hitting a PR on the sheaf and just watching it like creep up over the bar and then the crowd goes nuts. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
that is cool. That is cool. For Highland Games, all those events are in the games, right? Like it's
Hmm.
anytime you go to a competition, you would do all of those together.
Not every games has all 9 events.
Okay.
Most do. Most will have between 7 and 9. A lot of games, if the field is small, they'll cut out the light hammer just because that one goes so far. Space constraints, they don't want any safety issues, so they'll cut that one, and sometimes they'll cut one of the other events as well. But yeah, typically you'll throw in all the events, and the overall score is based on the accumulation of all the events. You can't be a specialist in just one and decide to sit the other ones out.
Right.
The sport is all of the throwing events.
How does the scoring work exactly?
There are a couple different ways to score it. The most common way is, I think they call it golf scoring, where take each event and first through ninth gets like however many points based on their placing. So first place you get 1 point, second place 2 points, and then the lowest score wins overall at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then the other way is decathlon scoring, which is more similar to like track and field decathlon, where your throwing distance is compared against the field records or the world records, and you get a certain amount of points based off of that. And in that one, the highest score wins. So obviously, the closer to the world record you are, or the closer to the field record you are, the more points you get. Yeah. So, but typically it'll be that golf scoring, and there's only a couple games that'll do the decathlon type.
Yeah, the decathlon type seems very difficult. Seems like that's a higher level competition, I would imagine.
Yeah, they've got all the formulas and stuff figured out. I just try to throw far.
Yeah,
but there's advantages and disadvantages to each one. But yeah,
me throw far.
That's right. That's all I can do.
It's like powerlifting. You know, people talk about dots, but nobody knows what the fuck it is or how to find it. I don't know anyone that knows how to calculate it. So
yeah, I haven't even competed since they started using that. It was Wilkes when I did.
Wilkes guy, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done a powerlifting meet in, 6-7 years probably.
Yeah,
maybe not quite that long, but
like in COVID, they actually changed it to the Wilkes 2 because there were so few people competing. They didn't have enough people to fill out the competitions. So like for nationals and stuff, they used Wilkes 2, which like inflated all the scores, and then they used dots after that. So.
Gotcha.
Who knows what any of it means? Let's see. Is there any, like, you do a lot of Olympic style training still, like powerlifting and like explosive training, I imagine, because you want to be both strong and fast. But is there any like transfer, like direct transfer from the gym to Highland Games, or is it so specific because the movements are so weird?
There's definitely some transfer, but in general, throwers throw. So like being the biggest, strongest guy doesn't automatically mean you're going to be an amazing Highland Games athlete. The throws are also skill based, and just being strong in the squat or the deadlift or the bench press doesn't automatically guarantee you're going to do well in any particular event. I'd say raw strength carries over a little more to the height events, like weight over bar. Sometimes the caber, like if you can kind of get the timing right, if you've got the power to deadlift 700 pounds, you might be okay with flipping a caber on your first time. But in general, you've got to build up that skill and just throwing specific strength, training the implements, getting that time with the implements in your hand if you want to be good.
Right.
But being strong never hurts. Like the best professional guys and girls are freaky strong as well as super technical and athletic.
Yeah. I think Mark Bell always said strength is never a weakness.
Right.
Even though he might have gone off the deep end now, but that one kind of always stuck with me.
Yeah, that's a good quote for sure.
Did you ever meet Miles Wetzel or ever hear about Miles?
I've heard Miles' name. I don't know that I've ever met him. I've definitely seen him interact in some of the Highland Games Facebook groups.
Yeah, I bet you have.
I've never met him though.
He's very outspoken, but he actually lives in Tuscaloosa still, I believe. He used to train at the gym I was at, and he was, I don't know, like 6-time world champion in the Masters for Highland Games. And he was just kind of a random guy. I don't even know if he threw in college or anything. I think he played football. And he always used to, crazy old guy, he used to always keep his trophies in the back of his truck, like in the back seats. So he just had, shitloads of swords, maces, clubs, all kinds of things just in the back of his truck. And
nice.
I remember first time meeting him, he yelled at me and my buddy because we were doing curls on the cable machine. And he walks over and he's like, "You want big fucking arms? You better get some heavy ass dumbbells." So that was the first interaction. The second interaction was him taking us out to his truck to show us his trophies.
What a guy.
So weird, right? So weird.
That's funny.
Big roided up guy talking about throwing all the time.
Yeah, there's a pretty diverse group of people that get into the sport. It's not all just track and field athletes. There's a lot of us, but a lot of people cross over from powerlifting or strongman or weightlifting, or they might not have any experience in any of that stuff. They just like going to the gym and want to celebrate their Scottish heritage, and they find Highland Games, and that's what they decide they're going to train for. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do see a lot of strong men and strong women going over and doing both. I don't know, maybe Highland Games maybe seems like it's not as taxing, to be honest.
I'd say yes and no.
Yeah.
It's not as taxing in terms of like a single competition. In most of the other strength sports, you can only compete a couple times a year if you're at a high level, just because you can do so much damage to yourself lifting those maximal weights. But Highland Games is a lot more like track and field, where you can compete several weekends in a row. There's in Scotland, there's guys that compete multiple times per week. So you can compete a lot more frequently in Highland Games because each individual competition is not nearly as taxing as a powerlifting meet or a weightlifting meet or a strongman show. But it's such a long season that by the end of the year, almost everyone is beat up and has got something going on, just because you got to think your training volume has to be split between being on the field, throwing, and also being in the gym. So in those other sports, the gym is your training.
Yeah.
In Highland Games, the gym is your GPP. You're just fortifying your body, trying to maintain some strength through the year, but the vast majority of your training has got to be spent out on the field in addition to being in the gym.
Right.
So it's taxing in a different way, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense, and that kind of makes sense why people can cross over, maybe not so easily, but comfortably, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, without feeling like you're breaking down because you're doing multiple styles of competing in a year.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually another Alabamian, Hannah Lindsay.
Yep, I know Hannah.
Yeah, she's. I've met her a few times. I've competed with her in strongman actually, but yeah, she's another one. Her and her boyfriend Tommy, her fiance now. But yeah.
Yeah, I know both of them. I've competed at a couple games with both of them. Competed with Thomas back when I was an amateur, actually at one of Danny's games in Tennessee, and then. Yeah, I've met Hannah a couple times. Can't remember exactly where I've thrown with her, but I know she just, I think she took 4th at the Women's World Championship a couple weeks ago up in Alaska.
And she, at 4th, and she still holds some world records, I believe, in Highland Games and certain events. She's really, really good athlete.
Yeah.
Great strong woman and
Freaky
Highland
strong.
Games athlete. Freaky.
Yeah, definitely.
Thomas, he's funny. I competed with him in his very first strongman competition. It was also my first strongman competition. And he signed up as a novice. But he walked in, he had like 22-inch arms. And we were like, what universe are you a novice? And then he told us he was like a bodybuilder and just doing this for fun. And then he kicked everyone's ass. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what our deadlift was, but it might have been like 455 from a 15-inch deadlift. And everybody got like 10, 12, and then Tommy goes out and gets like 26. And he's just like crushing everybody. It was so funny.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yep.
Albuquerque, Alabama. That just shows, I guess, how kind of small but tight-knit the community is for Highland Games.
For sure. Yeah. A lot of the best athletes will travel to the same games all around the country, like pro or amateur. So yeah, everyone kind of gets to know each other real well, compete with the same guys a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got people all across the country, and like when you get good enough, there's guys that'll come over from Europe that'll compete in the big games over here, and some guys from over here will go out there. So yeah, really cool.
Is there like specific, I guess, promoters or whatever that you would prefer working with, or is it like just kind of where the season goes?
So kind of the weird thing about Highland Games in comparison to the other strength sports is there's no real one governing body in Highland Games. Each festival, each games kind of operates independently from one another. There are a few like every state, every region has some type of governing body that's putting on the games, but they're all independent from one another. A lot of the rules are the same. Most of the time, the rules are exactly the same. Implements are the same, but there's no one set governing body that says these are the best, or like these are the rules. These are the, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but there's no governing body the way there isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's different games around the country that have just kind of gained a reputation for being elite level competitions, whether they've just been going for a really long time and they have a lot of sponsors and donors and stuff like that, or just people will decide to all sign up for one game and compete with each other. And yeah, a lot of the top guys will just be in.
I was going to say, it kind of makes sense, I guess, because it's like a more objective measure when you're throwing for distance. It's like, did your feet stay planted? Did you throw it far enough? That's kind of it. Whereas like in powerlifting, you're like looking at depth, now bench depth, and all kinds of shit like that. So, you know, it makes sense that similar to strongman too. Like, there's not necessarily correct technique. It's like, did you put the weight over your head? Yes, no.
There's a few rules that, like, depending on what part of the country, like there's different types of trigs that we throw out of. So the trig is the box that we throw out of. There's two different styles and they have a little bit different rules, but yeah.
Well, that was my next question, was what kind of equipment and like gear is necessary or not necessary, or do people normally use or not use?
So if you want to be good, it's always best to have your own practice implements. Having stones to throw, having weights to throw, having hammers to throw, sheaf. Most people don't have a caber just because that's a giant stick that is going to be really hard to store and really hard to transport. But all the other events, it's pretty easy to get your hands on some. There's not really anything you can do in the gym that exactly mimics anything we do on the field. So yeah, it's good to have the full arsenal of equipment if you want to be able to train and be at your best.
That makes sense. And as far as like gear during the competition, is there anything that people normally wear, like wrist wraps or belts? I know you guys have to wear a kilt, which is cool.
Yep. Sport, you gotta compete in a kilt. You'll see, if you ever go to a Highland Games, you'll see a lot of the athletes have a giant gear crate that they're dragging behind them with all their stuff. Just different footwear. Like, personally, I've got a pair of soccer turf cleats that I'll throw most of the events in. I'll carry around a pair of track and field throwing shoes just in case the grass is super low and I don't need much grip and I want to move a little faster. I've got a pair of hammer boots, which is literally a like work boot that you attach a blade to that digs you into the ground. Because when you get going with a hammer, it's really hard to stay on balance. So that blade gives you a little bit of extra support. So yeah,
interesting.
3 different types of footwear, wrist wrap, chalk, tape, all that stuff.
The normal stuff plus some modified clothing.
Yep.
Interesting. I don't know if I've ever noticed that before. Bladed boots.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a picture.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. As far as like with strongman and powerlifting, it's been in the past like there's no such thing as like nutrition and diet for those guys. They just eat everything they can. Is Highland Games the same? Like, is it weight class based or?
There are 2 weight classes in Highland Games. Basically, there is lightweight and not lightweight. So lightweight is under 200 pounds for men, under 150 pounds for women. And then if you're over those, then congratulations, you get to throw with the big boys and big girls, even if you're 210 pounds, even if you're 155 pounds. Yeah, so that the average pro Highland Games man, I would say, is right around 300 pounds normally. So yeah, it doesn't pay to be the skinny boy on a diet if you're trying to compete with those guys.
Right. Mass moves mass, they say.
Right, yep.
They got technique plus their 300 pounds. Probably going to throw pretty far.
Yeah, freaky strong, freaky big, and athletic.
That's funny. I think, so I mean, anything over 200 pounds is super heavyweight at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or my personal favorite is sexy heavyweight. That's what I go with every time.
There you go.
I commentated at a regional meet we had here, and every single time we had a super heavyweight, that's what I said. I was like, this is our sexy heavyweight class coming out.
Very nice. I like it.
They always, squat 700 for their opener, which is, disgusting. What are some of your career highlights? I know you like the hammer toss. Like, what's your best throws?
So I won an event. I won the light hammer at the national championships last year. That was really cool. That was a really cool feeling. First year as a pro. Like fifth overall was pretty cool, but winning the light hammer was pretty awesome. Given that's my favorite event, and I
Right.
pulled one out when it counted at the national championship. So that was pretty cool. Another highlight was going to Norway for the amateur world championships. That was just such a cool experience.
Yeah.
Getting to like travel abroad on like they put me up in a hotel. I paid for my flight, but then they reimbursed me for half of it. So basically going to Norway for half the cost and getting put up in a hotel to throw rocks while wearing a kilt was
That's
pretty awesome. Those are probably the two big ones.
Yeah. Did you ever get any kind of big accolades in college when you threw?
I'm a much better athlete now than I ever was in college. In college, I was way too busy just partying and drinking and doing everything aside
Chasing
from
girls, yeah.
Exactly. Aside from
Yep.
focusing on my training. So, yeah, sometimes I kind of look back on my college career and I'm like, man, like knowing what I'm doing now, like I wonder if I had just focused more when I was in college, if I could have like made it to NCAA regionals or NCAA championships in the javelin, but it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, the past is the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my
Yeah.
best ever placing in college, I took sixth at the Mountain West Conference Championship.
Not awful.
Yeah.
Middle of the pack.
Yeah.
And now in nationals as a pro, not a bad trade off.
For sure.
What do you think if you were in someone else's shoes that had never seen Highland Games? What do you think their initial reaction would be? Like if they were just out and about and they saw a sign, and then they saw some giant guy throwing a big ass stick. Like, how do you think people get really interested in it besides that spectacle factor?
So I love, there's one of the best pros in the country right now, Kyle Lilly. He was asked a similar question a while back, and like, how would you describe Highland Games to your friends, or how would your friends describe Highland Games? And he said, LARPers that think they're athletes.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So
That's a lot of
basically,
us.
yeah, the guys that are swinging around swords and shields in a park, that's basically what we do, but we get paid to do it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
God, that is so true. Though the last podcast I actually had a collegiate coach on. She coaches at Alabama and coaches women's basketball, and she coached at Duke for men's and women's basketball at one point. So she's worked with like actual athletes, like Jason Tatum and shit. And I was like, yeah, what's the biggest difference you can see between your athletes and you coach real athletes compared to what I work with, which I love all the people I work with and other powerlifters that I've been around. They're all great. But like, we're fake athletes. We're not real. Like it takes some skill, it takes some athletic ability, but it is not Division I sports, which technically you also did. So you can see both sides of it.
Right, and there's so many crossover, like guys that were NCAA All-Americans in the shot put or the discus or something that do end up finding Highland Games. So that's the thing about Highland Games is, like, even though like it looks goofy and we're wearing a kilt and spinning around in circles with a rock, there are some freaky athletic people that do end up finding the sport. Like a couple weeks ago, there was a games up in Massachusetts, and Nick Ponzio, who's a shot putter for the Italian national team, he ended up throwing at a games up there and is talking about getting involved in the sport. So
that's awesome. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, he made a post about it. I want to say it was like early June, early to mid June, but yeah. So you've got guys like that, and even just on a little bit smaller scale, guys that are, like I said, NCAA All-Americans that placed really well collegiately, but maybe just didn't want to pursue the pro route in throwing, or maybe the top three guys were just so good that they never saw themselves getting past them, but they're still freak athletes. So
yeah, one of the other guys that was at Bama, God, I don't remember what his name is. Difficult, but he's Nigerian. I think he used to be like Nigerian Nightmare or something on Instagram, but he threw at Alabama, won an SEC title. I think he got second at nationals in the heavyweight category or super heavyweight, however they do it, and then in the shot. And now he's wrestling for the WWE. So like,
that's cool.
Kind of shows you how freaky their athletes are, because they can just like throwers, sprinters, they can kind of go wherever they want after college in terms of sports and strength sports or whatever, because a lot of them are also freaky Olympic lifters. Like if they wanted to, they could really probably do some damage in those sports too.
Yeah, Olympic lifting, powerlifting. Most of them have like huge lifts.
Oh yeah. If you were going to give someone advice on how to start in Highland Games, like what would be your, 1, 2, 3 points to give them?
I'd say Facebook is the best tool for that. There are so many Facebook groups. NASGA, North American Scottish Games Association, they've got a Facebook group. That's probably a good place to start. And then from there, they'd probably find like some more local groups, depending where they are. Also, just like following athletes on social media, like if they happen to see someone that's involved in the Highland Games, like most of us, none of us have a big ego. We're throwing rocks and wearing a kilt, like I said. Send us a message, just ask how to get involved, and most of us would be happy to help find someone in your area. Like that's what I did. I saw a guy wearing a Highland Games shirt, and I just went up and talked to him and asked if he'd have me out to train. So those are probably the 3 places I'd start: Facebook, find athletes on social media, see if there's someone in your community.
Yeah, that's how I heard about it too. Was just through people in the gym. Someone talked about going and throwing one day, and I was like, "Throwing? What do you mean? You throwing the shot put? What is this?" No, they were just throwing. I think they were throwing hammers that day, oddly enough. But
nice.
Yeah, I will say, similar to other sports, maybe, or strength sports in general, maybe powerlifting is a little outside that box sometimes, but everybody's so nice.
Extremely.
Anyone I've met that does Highland Games, super nice.
Yeah.
Same thing with strongman. Like all those people are so nice. The communities, I think, they're too small for people to be assholes.
Yeah, there are very few jerks that I've met personally. I'm sure there are some, but everyone's been pretty cool that I've met in this sport. Everyone's been willing to help. Even when I was an amateur, I'd reach out to some of the pro guys and ask if they could help me with some technique on some of my events, and they would almost always reach back out and give me a couple pointers and things to work on.
I'm kind of interested in the technique too. Like, how do you go about? I'm sure you film it, but how do you go about like improving your technique? Is it just things start clicking over time, or because you came from a collegiate throwing background, so you had experience in that anyways?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so having a technical model in mind is where you want to start. You want to know what the throw should look like. So find someone that is at a really high level, that is built similarly to you, and see how they throw and kind of emulate them. That's kind of how I started. There are a couple guys that I like to watch to try to make my throws look like theirs, and then just kind of side-by-side video comparison and try to feel different things. There's so much to the technique in most of the events that you can't try to focus on everything all at once. So it's just a very slow creep of focus on one thing at a time, and then once you fix that, move on to the next thing, and then keep working up the chain and just keep trying to improve a little bit each time you get out and practice.
Yeah. So it's similar. I mean, it's similar to anything, but I mean more so where you're emulating someone. You don't really. I guess technically sometimes you do that in powerlifting, but most of the time you try and find what works for you more so than what works for someone else.
And like so like the technical model is a place to start, and then you might find based on your body shape or your arm length or your skill set, whatever, you might find that you end up doing things a little bit differently. That's totally fine. But I'd say place to start is like see how the best are doing it and start from there.
That's interesting. I don't know. I've always wanted to get into throwing, so I'll probably have to do it at some point. Do one of the Highland Games.
Check it out, man. Yeah.
I need to. It's tough enough finding time to go do powerlifting, so I know adding that on top of it would be interesting. But we have some pretty good strongmen down in Mobile, where I'm from, or not where I'm from, where I'm at currently. Tyler Davis is one of the. I think he's won World's Strongest Man under 90 kilos 2 times in a row. So I'm sure he's getting into Highland Games here at some point. Just all those guys, I think, at the top, they always do a little bit of crossover just to get some rounding,
The cool thing about Highland Games is a lot of games will host a novice class where
Yeah.
there's no experience necessary. You kind of just show up and they'll maybe do a clinic beforehand. You show up to the field an hour early and they'll kind of do a 1 hour little run through of all the events to make sure no one's going to get hurt and you kind of understand the basics of the sport. But it's very beginner friendly. There's a lot of those novice games. You don't need to have any sort of experience. You just show up and do your best. So that would definitely be an option for people that maybe don't have the time to or don't want to make the financial investment of buying all their own stuff. And before they start competing, maybe go sign up for a game, check it out, see if it's something you want to pursue. And then after you do that novice game, after you get a little bit of experience, then you can buy your own stuff and train for it.
Yeah. Kind of, you don't have to go out and look for rocks just yet.
Right.
You don't have to go gather stones up just yet. I guess how scalable is it? So, do you know off the top of your head, if you were finding a novice competition, what would the weights be scaled down to?
So the weights are all the same.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as I know, for amateur men, amateur women, novice or advanced amateur or pro, the implements are going to be the exact same. The only times when the implements change will be once you turn 40 in the master's class, or if you're a lightweight, the weights change a little bit. And the only events that will change will be the heavyweight for distance, which is for the open class men is 56 pounds. Once you turn 40, or if you're under 200 pounds, that will be 42 pounds. And that'll be the same implement you throw for the weight over bar as well.
That's kind of insane to think about a 42-pound weight going over my head. Or 56-pounder.
Yeah, I was going to say for you, probably be 56.
56. Yeah. I'm in the 110s, 240-ish. So yeah.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I will have to do that. I think I probably need to just talk to Danny.
Yeah, talk
Danny
to Danny.
Webster is probably a good resource for anybody that wants to get into it.
Yeah,
he's
definitely
pushing it hard.
He's got a lot of info on his website, backyardrebellion.com.
Oh,
he's got all the games that he runs. He keeps track of all the world records and stuff, and he might have some more just kind of general info for people that are looking to get into it. So definitely worthwhile to check his website out or reach out to him on social media or email.
I'll definitely have to do that. As for you, what are your future goals in the sport? Within the next few years, even, you have anything you have your sights set on?
I'd love to place top 3 at nationals, which would then qualify me to compete at worlds. That's kind of my main goal, that I'd love to make it to worlds.
What do you think it would take to necessarily get to that point? Is there a certain distance in things, or how would you be able to quantify that?
Just keep getting more consistent across the board. Like I said, the sport is all of the events. It's not just one or two of them.
Right.
So I've got a few events that I'm really strong in, like the hammers, and then I'm pretty good at the weight over bar. But I'm lagging in a couple of the other ones. So just keep bringing up my lagging events, keep building on my strengths. I'm already better this year than I was last year. So I'm trending in the right direction. So just keep working on stuff, keep trying to fix one little thing at a time, and I think it'll pay off.
As long as you don't have many Ponzinibbio's coming over, you'll be in good shape.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if he sticks with it. He his numbers at his first game were not he didn't just come and set all the world records or anything.
Right.
So even though he's an Olympic caliber shot putter, it's different than throwing a stone on grass. And then there's nothing they do in track and field that's similar to slinging around a 56-pound weight or throwing the caber or throwing the sheaf. So
you are right.
He definitely when those guys come over, they've got a ton of potential if they decide to train for it. It's just a matter of if they have enough interest in it and if they stick with it.
Yeah. I would think it would take, it wouldn't take them as long necessarily as one of us normal people.
Having a throwing background is definitely a cheat code, especially throwing the discus or the shot put at a high level in college or post-collegiately. Definitely a cheat code for the Highland Games.
But I guess the issue would be that they're probably making more money not even winning competitions in the pros in shot than they are in Highland Games.
Yeah, it just depends on the competition, but
yeah, because he's Olympic caliber, like you said. He's been to the Olympics a few times, so I imagine he's making pretty good money from Italy doing that. But that'll be interesting. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see like the growth of Highland Games. It already has grown a lot in the past probably 10 years. It was something you almost never saw, and now you can see it on ESPN occasionally. So that's pretty huge.
Yeah, I think every year that I've been involved in it, there's been more and more athletes by the end of the year. We have a database, like a ranking system database, and there's more athletes every single year. It's growing and growing and growing.
So it's like an open powerlifting, but for Highland Games.
Right.
That's pretty cool. What's it called?
It's called NASGA, NASGA, North American Scottish Games Association. That's the it's a super old, kind of decrepit website, but it's still like kind of the gold standard. There's another one called HeavyAthlete.com. That's
a good one.
They're kind of starting to have that one be the main database. But NASGA is still the one that a lot of the bigger ADs will look at first to decide like who they want to invite, or that's kind of like the gold standard of the rankings and stuff.
I see. That's pretty cool. Having a database is always cool because in powerlifting especially, you have people that will make odd claims sometimes that you just run into. Like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to powerlift and I benched 600, and it's like, well, I can actually look that up now. So you also coach. Do you coach mainly Highland Games athletes or just across the board, like general strength and conditioning, or what are your athletes looking like?
I've got a mix of general strength people, but I've got a lot of Olympic weightlifters and a lot of Highland Games athletes. Those are probably my two biggest client populations, along with the general strength people. I don't really have any. I've got a couple guys who compete in strongman. I used to have a couple powerlifters, but I just don't really have any interest in coaching powerlifting. So I don't have any of those at the moment. Yeah,
they're fucking boring. I get it.
I coach in a powerlifting gym, and every other coach that's there is a powerlifter pretty much. So like, they're not going to hire me for powerlifting coaching when there's all these other people that actually compete in the sport of powerlifting. So yeah, I focus mainly on Olympic weightlifting and Highland Games.
Hey, the riches are in the niches.
I like that one too. Nice.
It's also probably more rewarding coaching in the sport you enjoy, or even in Olympic weightlifting. Yeah,
Olympic lifting was kind of my gateway drug into strength sports. Once I finished college, my college strength coach was the USA weightlifting state chair, and he had has a weightlifting club, and I did a meet with him right after I finished, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, and
that's a pretty easy segue right there.
I've always had a love and passion for the Olympic lifts. So even though I'm no longer competing in weightlifting, it's cool to be coaching weightlifters still.
Yeah. So you mentioned, 50 minutes ago about going to grad school. So you didn't get your master's?
Or I did get my master's.
You did finish it?
So I've got a master's of science in exercise science.
Right.
And so that's I originally did that because I wanted to do college strength and conditioning.
Right.
Decided I didn't want to do that, but I was already there. I was like, well, I may as well just finish. I already spent a bunch of money and time doing this. I may as well just go ahead and stick it out. So yeah, I do have my master's of science in exercise science.
So that's how you got into strength coaching. I guess, I don't know if we want to call it personal training, but it is basically personal training. Glorified.
Yeah. Right.
More important, but so that's good. I think it's kind of the turn of strength and conditioning, or athletics, I guess, post college, but a lot more people were being educated and experienced, whereas like 10 years ago it was only experience, there was no education. And do you have any opinions on guys that just lead by experience in their strength sport?
I mean, I will definitely say that I learned way more outside of the classroom in grad school than I did inside of the classroom. For what I do, it is entirely unnecessary for me to have a master's degree. I don't think I'd say I reflect back on anything that I learned in grad school that I use in my everyday coaching. So I've got no problem with people that are relying mainly on their experience. You can learn a ton, not in the formal classroom setting, on training and nutrition and all that stuff.
Yeah, this is true. I guess for you guys too, like Highland Games, strongman, Olympic weightlifting, there's not really many studies that have ever been done on most of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Olympic weightlifting, some, but definitely not the other two. I've not heard of a single one, so it would be hard to pull any data up.
I want to say there are a couple. I've seen like in the Facebook groups, a couple people that are in graduate programs that are trying to do some research on
nice
Highland Games athletes. So I want to say there are either some published or there are some that are in process. I'm not exactly sure on what, but yes, hopefully there'll be a little bit more. But
yeah, that's good. I think maybe I imagine you could take some from just track and field studies, but it's similar but not the same. I have a friend that actually is doing a study on Olympic weightlifters here soon. She's doing her PhD down in Mobile, so that might be something good. I think she's mainly doing it on women though, so cool. There's just not enough studies out there on women in general in strength sports, so it'll be a good addition either way.
Yeah, very nice.
I think that's all I had for you. Did you want to plug anything or add anything? Do you have anything else you wanted to go over?
No. If you want to reach out, you can find me on Instagram. Nik Aston HG is my Instagram, or my business Instagram is @EnchantedStrength. Happy to answer any questions or any of that. EnchantedStrength.com is my coaching business website as well. I think that's all I've got.
Yeah. So reach out to Nik if you have any Highland Games questions and want to join in the competition. I know they're really exciting. Anytime I've been around one, the crowd is always like so into it the whole time, which you don't find in other strength sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always something going on.
Sometimes in weightlifting maybe, but it's because there's only 6 lifts and it kind of flies by the way they do it. But like in Highland Games, it's like everyone is on fire the whole time, which is cool.
Yep. Yeah, there are normally multiple classes on the field, so there's always something to watch. There's always someone doing the crowd favorite events like the sheaf, weight over bar, and caber. Yeah, there's little downtime, which is definitely ideal for any of those like strength sports. Hey everybody, just wanted to come on and thank you for watching or listening to the podcast wherever you get podcasts at. If you haven't already, go ahead and give us a like, a follow, and a rating on whatever service you use. We'd really appreciate that. And you can let us know in any of the text boxes or comments or on Instagram, wherever you can. Let us know who you might want to see on the podcast next. We're going to try to make that happen. We got a lot of good guests coming for the rest of this year in 2024. And if we can make your suggestions possible, we want to do that for you. All right. Thanks. Appreciate you guys.